Hey guys, it's Luke with another PGA Daily Fantasy Sports Preview. This time we're going to be covering the 2021 Memorial Tournament. This is going to be my weekly DFS video where I show you guys my data-based approach to taking down a PGA DFS event. We'll be going over the course, the field, who's playing and whatnot. We'll be going over some of the key metrics I'm looking at this week in terms of my custom modeling. And finally, we'll be going over my top 6 golfers to target, one in each price range there on DraftKings. So without further delay, we'll hop right into it. First of all, with the field this week. This week's field is one of the strongest for a regular tour stop we've seen in quite a while, honestly. We're looking at an invitational status, an absolutely stacked field of 121 golfers, and we pretty much have everyone playing this week. A few notable exceptions include DJ, Brooks, Webb, Berger, Abraham Ancer, Paul Casey, but pretty much everyone in that top 50, top 100 in the official World Golf Rankings will be teeing it up this week. We have the top 65 in ties making the cut, which is normal for a PGA Tour stop, and we do usually see the cream of the crop do well at this event. So we look at the 6 of 6 percentages over the years in terms of getting your guys through the cuts. It is one of the events where you have the highest 6 of 6 percentage. So definitely keeping that in mind. Now let's hop into the course for this week's event. The course for this week is Muirfield Village, that is in Dublin, Ohio, just outside Columbus, Ohio, if you weren't familiar. This is a design by the GOAT being Jack Nicklaus, not quite Tiger Woods yet, in my opinion. It is a par 72, a 7,392 yard course with bent grass greens. The Memorial's been played for over 30 years now. It's an event that Jack Nicklaus has hosted of late, and it really has high status in terms of a PGA Tour event. It's one of those events that you mark down at the beginning of the year. You plan your schedule around that event, maybe the majors, the players, those kind of events. It's on that type of trajectory, in my opinion. We've seen this event quite a few times, even over the past year. We saw it 2 weeks in a row last year for the workday, and then the week after for the Memorial. And to be honest, it played very differently from week to week. At the workday, it played a little bit easier than it did at the Memorial. They let the rough grow out, they let the fairways and the greens firm up, and we really saw its teeth the second time around. So I think a lot of people may put some stock into what we saw at the workday. It's going to play much, much more similarly to what we saw the second time around. Now, with that being said, this course went under a heavy renovation. So this is where I'm going to spend a lot of my time on this video, where a lot of my analysis is going to take place. But all in all, they essentially redid every single hole at the golf course except for 4. They tore up all the greens, they added a lot of bunkers, moved bunkers around, completely re-angled some holes with tee boxes. But let's just go through it piece by piece to see how it's going to play this time. Just from an overall note, Jack was quoted as saying, "This renovation was aimed to make the course better to play, quote unquote, better to play, not necessarily harder." Now, he says not necessarily harder, but in Jack's view, and pretty much most golf critics these days, better probably is harder. You have a lot of these bombers hitting the ball out there, taking advantage of angles that a lot of other players can't, and you've heard some legends use the word mockery, especially, with Bryson DeChambeau and some of those guys. And it definitely doesn't surprise me, especially when you look at some of the renovation notes here, that his renovation, it seems aimed at the bombers, to be quite honest with you. Most of the changes were bunker movements, and a majority of those movements were taking fairway bunkers from the 280 yard range to the 310 to 320 yard range. What that means is that bunkers that players were typically able to hit over before are now going to be in the landing spot for a lot of these longer hitters. The shorter hitters now are going to have, plenty of space to drive. They're not going to be worrying about these fairway bunkers. So I do fear that distance is going to be, I don't want to say disadvantageous, because it's always an advantage to be closer to the hole. You just have a lot less variance in the dispersion of your shots. But overall, I think that a lot of the changes that he made was to counteract some of that distance. We also saw a lot of the greens being recontoured. Jack talked a lot. I saw a video this week where he went, hole by hole about what he changed, and he complained a lot, about not having a say in how the greens were contoured the first time around. He bought the golf course. It wasn't something that he designed the first time around. He did a lot of the tinkering over the years, but he is said to have had recontoured almost every green but 4 at the golf course. Jack Nicklaus is known for having very, very complex greens, greens with a lot of undulation. So a lot of those undulations are most likely, again, we can't confirm this till we see it in play, were added at the Memorial. So you're going to see harder greens to read this week. Something else to mention is that the new greens are going to be firm, so they are bent grass. Before they were bent grass, they had some Bermuda, some paspalum even growing in just from some of the tinkering done over the years, but they have completely ripped out the old layer of sod, added in pure bent grass, so it is going to be running very pure this week. But like I mentioned, the new sod was put down, so it's going to be very firm. When you have new sod, it's very packed together. It's meant to, kind of grow in over time, kind of get broken in like a shoe. It softens up, it falls into its natural position. But until then, it's rigid. It's blocks of sod. So it's going to be playing firm and fast this year, whether they want it to be or not. No matter how much water they put down, it's going to play firm. I imagine this event playing extremely, extremely difficult this year. I'm talking probably one of the hardest events they've seen on PGA Tour history. Now, you're not going to hear that from a lot of other people looking at these renovation notes. I've looked at them with a little bit more detail than other people, I believe. And it looks like an absolute beast of a golf course now. It's not a golf course that's going to beat you to death with its length. You saw at Kiawah Island, they played it to 7,400 yards and it still beat people to death. I expect the scores to be a little bit better than what we saw at Kiawah, but I do expect it to be a little bit shocking to some people this week. Just how difficult a course can be when it plays firm, when you have these bunkers that are just devilish for any of the bombers. There's just not many advantages to be had. So that's what I got for the renovation, and we'll see how it plays this week. Now hopping into some of the key stats for this week at the Memorial. First of all, some notes with the redesign. We do have a lot of data for the Memorial. Over the last 10 years of shot length data, we do have a pretty good consensus on what plays well at the Memorial. But keeping in mind that it has been redesigned, has been changed so much, we are going to take a lot of this data with a grain of salt. Obviously it's going to play differently this year. I think it's going to play especially different due to the resodding, the firmness that we're likely to see. So we're going to be putting a lot of, anecdotal, non-quantitative data into this. It's just, there's going to be some speculation that's needed to get this right. And until we see the new golf course under PGA Tour standards for at least 2 to 3 tournaments, we're not going to be able to use this data, at least reliably. So with that in mind, just it's not going to be as quantitative this time around. We're going to have to do some speculation, and I just want to preface with that. First of all, for our number 3 key stat, we're going to have shots gained around the green. Now, before the redesign, this was the number 1 key stat at Muirfield Village. It's easy to imagine, given that a lot of the greens are small. Before the redesign, Muirfield Village had well below the tour average in terms of square footage on its greens. After the redesign, a lot of the greens have been enlarged. Nicklaus talked about making a lot of the really, really small greens just a little bit bigger. A lot of that was due to variance of pin locations he talked about. A lot of those smaller greens, he was confined to just like 2 or 3 pin locations. He really didn't have any variance with it. Now he increased some of that green size to add those pin locations. So you're not going to see as many greens missed. That's why it's at number 3 now. But considering the difficulty of the golf course, some of the complexity of these greens, you're going to have to get up and down, and it's not going to be easy. You're going to have some shots that run away from you. A lot of those bunkers are put in spots to be especially difficult, and you definitely want guys this week that can get it up and down. Coming in at number 2, we have driving accuracy. Now, this one really wasn't on the roadmap before the redesign. It was closer to the 25 out of 50 range, closer to tour average in terms of importance. But this week, I do think driving accuracy is going to be a premium. When you're dealing with firm fairways, they resodded some of the fairways, so you're going to have some firm fairways. Definitely when you're dealing with firm greens, you have to be playing from fairways. It's not necessarily staying out of the rough that's the issue. It's being in the fairway gives you the ability to apply spin to golf balls. When you have small greens that are extremely firm, the only way to hold those greens is with a lot of spin. The only, I guess, way around that, I would say, would be to have a very high apex, to hit ball extremely high. But people that hit the ball high also tend to, create a lot of spin. So you're looking for those kind of players, guys that can control that spin as well. And driving accuracy is going to be a way to enable that. If you're not in the fairway, a lot of people don't realize that. If you're in the rough, there's no way to put spin on the ball. It's just completely unpredictable. Sometimes you'll get a ball that spins normally, and 95% of the time you get something in between a knuckleball. So driving accuracy will be important. Our number one key stat, though, is shots gained approach. What many of the golf greats consider to be the beautiful part of golf. And Jack Nicklaus designs always prioritize accuracy with the irons. You've seen it at the Memorial before. It's a top 10 stat on the PGA Tour, shots gained approach at the Memorial. But after the renovation, I can only see it being just as important, if not more important. It's typically my number one key stat from week to week. And when you're dealing with any type of unknown, I usually like to, lean on what works from week to week. The bread and butter per se. And for me, that's shots gained approach. I'm going to be weighting it this week about 40%, in my custom model. So it's going to be pretty much, you're going to have the approach play. You're not going to make my player pool this week. So those are the key metrics I'm looking at and the ones I'll be implementing into my modeling. Now hopping into some of our player targets for this week on DraftKings. In the spend up tier, we have Justin Thomas at a price tag of $10,200, and he's quietly coming in with low ownership, low expectations, and to be quite honest with you, he's my pick to win this week. So JT has an elite skill set that pretty much fits any course, but here at the Memorial, it's tailor-made. No pun intended, he's a Titleist guy for the golf course. He possesses the rare combination of distance and accuracy off the tee that not many, can boast about on the PGA Tour. Bryson's relatively straight with his long driver. Jon Rahm, Dustin Johnson, and then you pretty much have Justin Thomas right there. And when he's firing on all cylinders, he's able to put up a score that not many can on the PGA Tour. He's somebody that's gone close to that 59 mark. We've seen him score in very difficult conditions before. And to win here at the Memorial, you're going to need to garner some of that magic. Somebody is going to go low. You're dealing with the top, golfers in the world. So why not JT? I also love his irons. He's number 2 on tour in terms of shots gained approach. He's up there with Morikawa, who's number 1. You have number 3 Victor Hovland, Zalatoris up there as well. Then pretty much everyone else. The thing about JT is that he also has the off the tee game, and most importantly this week, he also has the around the green game. If we look at JT's short game, he gains over 0.4 strokes per round around the green, which is excellent. That actually makes him top 10 in the field. And given all of that, that's why I love JT this week. He's not only a ball striking phenom, he's able to hit those low rope drives, take a little bit off it and get it in the fairway, but he's great at getting up and down. So I love the price tag. I like that he's being overlooked a little bit disrespected. Maybe that gives him a little bit of an extra edge this week to go out and win. So that's why he's my spend up this week. For my second man in that $9,000 price tier, we have Xander Schauffele coming in at $9,700. A little bit hefty for somebody like Xander, but honestly, it's well warranted. He's coming in the field in terms of shots gained total at number 2. The only player with a higher shots gained total than him is Jon Rahm, and Jon Rahm is the second most expensive player in the field. With Xander Schauffele, you get about a $1,500 discount and I say almost the same player. Obviously, if we look at long-term form, winning pedigree, Jon Rahm definitely has the advantage. But statistically, at least for this year, Xander Schauffele has pretty much been one of the best players in the world. He's gaining over a quarter of a stroke per round in every category, but more importantly, some of his highlights include 1.2 strokes gained per round tee to green. That's number 2 in the world, and he still has a great short game. If we look at that, he's still gaining 0.3 strokes per round, right around there for around the green stuff, and overall, he doesn't have a hole in his game. He's somebody that produces week in, week out, pretty much on every golf course. And at the Memorial, where we don't really know how it's going to play, having a guy with no weaknesses is probably a good thing. So I think his price tag might be the best attribute this week. He's priced right around guys like Colin Morikawa, Victor Hovland, Tony Finau, Patrick Reed. And overall, Xander Schauffele has just been a better player this year. He doesn't boast that win that a lot of those other guys do, but Xander Schauffele leads the entire tour in top 5s and top 10s, and I absolutely love him this week. For my bread and butter play this week, we have Cameron Smith, the Aussie, coming in at $8,600. And now that we've entered this 8K range, I just like to remind everyone, we're not going to find perfection. That 10K range, that 11K range, those studs don't have many holes in their game. Below that point, you have a lot of guys that they're good at one part of their game. They can kind of get by with the other parts. And that's what we're looking at here with Cameron Smith. Cameron Smith is one of the best short game players in the world. He looks like a phenom from time to time, especially out of the bunkers. And his gritty short game is going to be a huge asset this week here at the Memorial. Cameron Smith's gaining over 0.65 strokes per round with his short game, and he's been very, very solid this year with his long irons and his off the tee game. While he's not gaining off the tee, he's seen quite a bit of accuracy this year, which is definitely something we like to see at Muirfield Village. And he's also gotten streaky with his irons. We've seen him post really low rounds from time to time, and that happens when he's able to, combine those irons with his, epic short game. This week at the Memorial, you're gonna have to get out of trouble. Length isn't necessarily going to be a huge advantage like it is at most other courses, and as a result, I think it plays right into Cameron Smith's playbook, and he'll be relatively low owned. There's quite a bit of chalk around him, and he hasn't quite performed like his magic self his last few starts. He had the win at the Zurich, a couple top 10s mixed in there. But his last time out, I believe it was about a 50th place finish, maybe the 49th, something like that. Middling performance, nothing to write home about. You're going to have down weeks, right? And if a down week for Cameron Smith is still making the cut, I think that's just fine. So I'll be playing a ton of him this week, and he's my bread and butter play. My value play this week comes in at the top of the value range. At $8,000, we have Keegan Bradley, but he's playing like an absolute animal of late. He's just playing too well. I had to spend up at the value range just because of how good this play really is. If we look at Keegan over the last 2-3 months, he's gained putting in 8 of his last 12 rounds. If we take that back to the last 24 rounds, he's still gained in 12 of those 24 rounds. If I told you that about Keegan Bradley 3 to 4 months ago, you'd go and bet him every single week in and week out. That's just how good his tee to green game is. If you look at his tee to green game, he's at number 10 in the field in terms of tee to green, and you're talking about a major-esque field. So that's obviously the less volatile part of golf, and as a result, we've seen Keegan Bradley get a lot of those results that we're looking for. We've seen him finish in the top 10 4 times over the last 2 months, and overall, I can't find a hole in his game. He's been great off the tee, very accurate, still has above average distance. His iron game has been absolutely scorching. He's been top 5 over the last month in terms of shots gained approach, and he's still gaining around the green. He's gaining in the 0.18 range per round. Nothing to write home about, but being better than average in terms of around the green is going to be good enough for this week at the Memorial, especially if you're not putting yourself in trouble very much like Bradley is. Again, he's been hitting it well with the putter, and I think if he can get a decent putter for just a round or two, and by decent I mean neutral, he's going to contend. So I love him as a value play this week. I'll be jamming him in plenty of my lineups. My diamond in the rough is going to be Charles Schwartzel, coming in at $7,400. And for me, the 7K range is a bit ugly this week. You're dealing with a lot of players that are, either priced up, that are typically in the mid 6K range, or guys that are just not impressive of late and still priced up in that 7K range. Schwartzel is one of the few guys that I'm willing to kind of take a stand on this week, and a lot of that is due to his tee to green statistics. If we take a look at the last few months for Charles Schwartzel, he's been on an absolute tear. The only exception to that is at Kiowa. He had a horrible time at Kiowa. He lost on approach, he lost putting, and it was a pretty ugly miscut, to be honest with you. Before that, though, he gained ball striking in, get this right, 20 straight rounds. That is unbelievable. That is probably one of the best stretches of golf of anyone in the world during that range. Obviously, we saw him have a couple second place finishes. One of them was in a team event, and a couple other top tens as well. And it seems like everyone's forgotten that. You know, he had that one bad performance at Kiowa in the wind in an unbelievably difficult course environment. I mean, we saw huge names miss the cut. You know, JT, DJ. I'm willing to cut Schwartzel a break. You know, if we're willing to cut JT a break, DJ a break, we can surely cut some of these lower tier guys a break as well. So if he returns to form with the ball striking, which again is less volatile week to week than any other stat, I really do like his chances to make a splash this week. And finally, my flyer pick for this week. This is going to be a very chalky play, but I'm honestly going to just have to stomach that this week. That is going to be Kyle Stanley at an unbelievable price tag of just $6,100. Yeah, you heard that right. Kyle Stanley, who's a top 70 player in the world, is priced $100 above the minimum. Now, last week, you know, we had Vincent Whaley. This week, it's going to be Kyle Stanley. A lot of times when you have chalk down in the 6K range, the wise move is to avoid it. Last week, if you avoided the chalk, like me, even after considering them early in the week, you were aiding like the fish that you are. This week, I'm going to be all over Kyle Stanley, and it's either going to go great, you know, I'm going to eat that chalk and do just fine, have to differentiate elsewhere, or I'm going to look like a real fish, you know. Don't do it when it's advantageous and then hop on at the wrong time. But Kyle Stanley, he's unfathomably priced, in my opinion. He's coming in making 5 of his last 6 cuts, so it's not like he's coming in with bad form. He's also had 4 top 25 finishes in those last 6 starts. These aren't, you know, easy fields by any means. He was playing at the Wells Fargo, played extremely well there, played well at the Valspar, top 5'd at that event actually. And overall, it's just been really impressive what we saw from Kyle Stanley. I'd consider playing him if he was in the mid $7,000 range. That's how weak that range is this week. And for him to be priced $100 over the minimum, it's outrageous. He should be owned in almost all of your lineups. I mean that. I mean probably right around the 40-50% at the very least kind of range, because it just opens up so much further up the board. If you were to play all 6 of these picks this week, you could fit them all in the same lineup. That's the kind of flexibility that Kyle Stanley can give you. And overall, you're looking for a top 20 finish this week. Like I said, in 4 of his last 6 starts, he's finished in the top 25, so you're looking pretty good there. And if he ends up finishing in the top 10, you could win a GPP with him in your lineup. So I think he has a really high upside, especially considering the price point. You're not looking for a top 5 or a ton of birdies or anything like that. And overall, Kyle Stanley's a great player. You know, he's somebody that we consider week to week at a much, much higher price tag. You know, ball strikes the heck out of the ball, you know, gains tee to green every single week. And if he catches a hot putter, he could top 5. I mean, he's done it at the Memorial before. He has a 2nd place finish, also a 6th place finish at this event. You cannot talk me out of playing Kyle Stanley. Maybe he comes in at 40%, 50% owned. I'd probably lock him at that point. He's just... he doesn't put himself out of tournaments too. So I've heard arguments so far where people say, oh, Kyle Stanley can't putt though, he puts himself out of tournaments. Even when he loses 4 to 5 strokes, we saw him finish in 40th place about 4 or 5 weeks ago. He wasn't even great off the tee. He has an extremely high floor due to his ball striking, specifically his iron play. And at $6,100, it's almost a free square. That's all I got for this week, guys. Let me know in the comments who you guys have winning this year's Memorial. I won't ask for your favorite value play because there's not one better than Kyle Stanley. But as always, make sure to like and subscribe if you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you next week.